he was saying that he even had it on his bank account stuff on file with IRS, so they should have given his money by now. If they haven't, they're just a mess. Everything's a mess. But I hope everybody's staying safe out there. And I hope you're doing okay with the news, that Bernie's out, because a lot of people thought, including myself, that he would hang around to the end because, Biden looks like he's not doing too well, to say the least. So, to have that as like an insurance option, and I know that the mainstream media and the corporate Democrats would not just casually, like, if something were to happen to Biden, be like, okay, then how about Bernie? I know that, but if he were in, he would at least have an argument of like, hey, he's the only person left in the race. He's the only one, he's this number 2 in number of delegates that have been amassed. So, hanging around until the end I thought made sense. It's what he did against Hillary Clinton, but in some ways he tapered off worse now than he did against Hillary. Against Hillary, he was very competitive until like the end. It took till after New York before it really looked like he had no chance then. So, all right. After all the bullshitting and all the failing, I cursed. As soon as I said, kids are allowed in here, oops, I cursed. Sorry, kids. I am not somebody to be looked up to. All right. So I'm going to play the what if game first. Now, that does not mean that, you can absolve Bernie and his campaign of all their mistakes, because I don't. I really don't. Ultimately, the responsibility lies with them, and they were wrong. They were wrong, and they made a lot of very big mistakes. But if we play the what if game for a second, if Bloody Monday never happened, Bernie won. Bloody Monday, as all you guys know, but nobody outside of people who watch this channel knows, Bloody Monday is the day that Mayor Pete and Amy Klobuchar dropped out. It was right before Super Tuesday. They dropped out. They endorsed him. There were reports that all of this was orchestrated by Obama. And at the same time, Elizabeth Warren stayed in. So stop and think about that for a second in retrospect. You have the centrist candidates, with the exception of Mike Bloomberg, but the centrist candidates who were actually getting the votes, they dropped out. They endorsed Biden. The other so-called progressive lane candidate, Elizabeth Warren, stayed in. And what you got was a perfect storm. What you got was the worst case scenario where the people who dropped, who were going to support Amy Klobuchar and who were going to support Mayor Pete, they ended up supporting Biden. I mean, that's what the numbers show. Biden's campaign, for those of you who don't remember, in the first 3 states, I mean, he was doing abysmally, as bad as you could possibly do. He was towards the bottom of the pack. And so his campaign needed an injection of adrenaline. Now, he did do well in South Carolina, and you can't take that away from him. But, I don't think he was doing well enough to topple Bernie, because Bernie had his strong 30% block in every state. Bernie had the giant win in Nevada. Bernie, had most votes in Iowa, and he won New Hampshire. And I don't agree with the argument that, early on there were already red flags. A little bit, but not enough to be concerned, because Bernie was winning. We could have a conversation about red flags when he starts losing. So you want to have the conversation at South Carolina? Got it. We'll have the conversation then, and it's a fair conversation. But in the first 3 states, any, concerns about red flags, it's overstated, because he was winning. And when you're winning, you are by definition doing well, and by definition, doing to some extent the right things. So if we allow ourselves to play the what if game here, the reason why I think 2020 hurts more than 2016 did is because I sincerely believe without Bloody Monday, if Mayor Pete and Amy Klobuchar stayed in the race for Super Tuesday, I think that Bernie definitely would have won Super Tuesday overall, and that would have given him more momentum going forward. And I think it's very likely that Bernie would have gotten a plurality. He would have gotten a plurality of support, which means that Bernie and his people have the best case at the convention, where we could actually say, if they try to steal it from us, I mean, everybody would agree, you're stealing it from the person who had the most votes. He may not have had a majority, but he had a plurality. You're stealing it. So but that's the what if scenario if Mayor Pete and Amy Klobuchar stayed in for Super Tuesday, and even probably stayed in longer than that. And by the way, reports were that Mayor Pete specifically was not initially cool with the idea. Mayor Pete specifically was like, nah, bro, nah, I want to stay in. Because he thought he was going to do, you know, not bad for a random mayor from South Bend, Indiana, who is a political novice on you know, the national scene. For him to go as far as he did already it was all to him. He's thinking, wow, I'm knocking it out of the park here. So he wanted to test himself to see how he would do on Super Tuesday. And apparently it took a lot of convincing to get him out. So I think that Mayor Pete and Amy Klobuchar both got promised positions in a Biden administration. And I think there's a decent chance Amy Klobuchar is the VP pick. Now, I don't know for sure, that's speculation, but I think they probably had to offer something big like that in order for her to drop out as well. I think it's either going to be Amy Klobuchar or Gretchen Whitmer, who's the governor of Michigan. It's going to be one of those two to be VP. I don't think Kamala, although that's what all the speculation is going on right now. And the reason I think it's not going to be Kamala is because Biden had said very clearly a number of times, I'm going to put a black woman on the Supreme Court. Now, to most people, you go, okay, that doesn't necessarily mean that he's not going to pick a black female VP, but in establishment politician world, that's exactly what that means. It means I'm not going to pick a black woman to be my VP, so don't get mad at me because I didn't pick a woman of color. I picked a woman, but not a woman of color. But don't worry, I'm going to put a woman of color on the Supreme Court. So that's like the hint of like, you know, don't be upset when I pick a white woman. So I think it's either going to be Amy Klobuchar or it's going to be Gretchen Whitmer. And they're both obviously terrible. But anyway, that's the what if game. The what if game is, what if Bloody Monday never happened? Bernie was definitely the favorite. Even with all of the mistakes that he made, I still think he was the favorite. And the other thing that we could say in the what if game is, what if Bernie had a stronger media apparatus to help him? And on this one, people like me and TYT and a lot of the lefty channels, I certainly feel some of the blame here because I'm just not big enough and they're not big enough to have the impact where we control the narrative. We're only responding to the narrative. So we're still, largely speaking, ancillary players in the game here where we don't have enough eyeballs watching us and there's not enough people watching us where we have so much power that we can swing elections. Whereas corporate media, you can argue, absolutely does. Because here's the deal. In 2016, even though everybody, you know, CNN, MSNBC, all the nightly news, CBS, ABC, you name it, they all hated Trump. And they all went after Trump aggressively. But he always had his oasis in the desert, Fox News. Fox News, maybe very early on, they weren't pro-Trump. But pretty quickly, they switched to being pro-Trump. And so Trump, he has his like one man against the world thing going on. But he always had support. Whether or not he realizes it, he always had the support of Fox News. Now with Bernie, theoretically, it's like, oh, he should get the support of the left-wing channels. He should get the support of, you know, MSNBC, for example, but they're not actually left-wing, and that's the problem. They're corporate Democrat central. They're the propaganda arm of the corporate wing of the Democratic Party. So Bernie didn't have nearly as much support as Trump had. Now, again, he had people like me, but we're not big enough. We don't have enough eyeballs watching us to really have that impact. And this is the other part of the what if game that I'm allowing us to play for a minute. What if MSNBC actually did what MSNBC is supposed to do, which is rep the left-wing point of view, and what if MSNBC was massively pro-Bernie? Then again, I think we'd be having a different conversation now. Because, you know, people were told over and over and over and over and over, like the smug default assumption is like, well, obviously Bernie's not electable. Obviously he's too far left. Obviously, he's too extreme. Obviously, you want to beat Trump, and the only way to beat Trump is to go with a tried-and-true politician like Joe Biden. Now, at the beginning, they didn't even like Joe Biden early on. They wanted anybody but Joe Biden of the centrists. So they would have taken Mayor Pete. They would have taken Amy Klobuchar. They would have taken Beto. They would have taken Kamala Harris. Like, there were all these centrists. that they prioritized, the media prioritized over Biden and Bloomberg. But when push came to shove towards the end and it was clear it was going to be Biden or Bernie, oh boy, did they fall in line. And there's so few pro-Bernie voices on these networks, and you don't get a pro-Bernie narrative coming out of these networks. So that really hurt him. That really hurt him. So this is the full extent that I'm willing to play the what-if game. What if Bloody Monday didn't happen? Okay, Bernie probably wins a plurality in that situation because he wins Super Tuesday, has more momentum going forward, and picks up and cleans up doing pretty well. Even if Biden, has some degree of a surge, I think Bernie still gets at least a plurality in that situation. And then the other part of the what-if game is, what if there was actually a strong left-wing media that's actually left-wing and supported Bernie in the same way that Fox News supported Trump? And I'll tell you, man, it hurts to think of these things because we were right there. We were right there. And again, I think the criticisms of Bernie are a little too extreme in this sense. If you don't have the caveat, like, hold on, he was winning in the early states, then your analysis is not nuanced enough. Because I have seen a lot of people act like now, like, oh, Bernie did nothing right at all, and I was so stupid to ever think that, he could possibly lead us, and it's like, no, you're being too harsh there. You are. Because he had the most votes in Iowa, he won New Hampshire, he landslided in Nevada. Remember what the conversation was post-Nevada? I do. The conversation was, is Bernie going to win a plurality or a majority? That was the conversation. So the only thing that changed the game completely is Bloody Monday. Mayor Pete, Amy Klobuchar backing out at the last minute and endorsing Biden. So I think my point here in playing the what-if game is not to absolve Bernie. I'll get to the mistakes that Bernie made in a second. But it's to say, don't ever think that this was a foregone conclusion, because it definitely wasn't. And it reminds me of, in the Hillary documentary that came out, there's a moment where Bernie wins. I forget what state it was that he wins, but he wins it pretty convincingly. And Hillary's team behind the scenes goes, oh my God, Bernie Sanders is going to win.